Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today, and welcome to my reaction to the 2020 Williams Formula 1 car, and my does it look very, very different in a good way. I think it's a big improvement from what they had in 2019, which was of course a toothpaste livery, really. I mean, I guess you could kind of say the colours are sort of like a minty fresh, aqua fresh toothpaste still, but I think personally it's a big step up from last year, which is not difficult maybe, but in the right light it looks pretty damn awesome. The launch pictures they showed at first look awesome in the kind of, with the colored lighting around it, and then the on-track pictures maybe a little bit less so, but I still personally see it as a massive improvement on last year, and generally speaking brings some nice color to the grid with the blue and red. There were rumors it was going to be a bit of an eyesore with the red splash, but I think they made it work with some nice lining details. Obviously, a few people don't like it and disagree with that statement on Twitter and whatnot, so let me know in the comments below what you guys are making of it, but I think in general, most of us can agree it's at least better than what they had last year, and it's nice to see Williams maybe just have a bit more colour, a bit more finesse, I guess, on the design compared to last year, where it literally looked like the intern sprayed some blue paint on what was going to originally just be a plain white car. So yeah, kudos to Williams on that design. It's also nice to see them have some different sponsors on the car. Obviously, Latifi brings in a different mix of sponsors potentially, and Paul, and in general, obviously, they're a team that's trying to get back on the up a little bit, maybe try and persuade some more sponsors to get on the car later on in the season. So nice to see that difference as well. But in terms of technically, let's speak about the car. It does look pretty tasty and a step forward with the way they've made the side pod arrangements, and also some of the end plates on the side pods, the way they changed it from last season, and a few little details here and there. There's still a lot that obviously they're going to have to make up compared to other teams, but let's dive into that then and kind of point out the specifics and the changes they made for the 2020 season and what they might be doing for the rest of the season, I mean into pre-season in Australia. So we're going to start off with this side view here in the studio shot. So the kind of first thing you'll kind of notice is, well, first of all, it's actually the side pod arrangement, like I said, itself is really now indented quite greatly. They already had this very odd side pod shaping compared to other teams where they maybe go for a more natural swoop and Coke bottle shape to the rear end of the car. Williams had this indent already in 2019, but they made it even more pronounced, and Mercedes has actually gone the same route as Williams this season in terms of the indented, essentially the way I think they've housed the radiator is essentially right on the top here of the housing, on the roof of the side pod inlet. Mercedes has gone even more extreme on that, as you see the pictures on the Merc, they've kind of tapered it in even more on the Coke bottle shape going back, whereas Williams have a bit more of a bulge going on, but it's almost the same kind of inspirational lines you've got there, which I think is essentially the radiator housed on the top of the side pod ceiling, and then trying to sucker it in and get an undercut going. And Williams have kind of done that a little bit more extreme than they did last year. Obviously, most teams trying to go for as tight as possible. You've seen the McLaren team go even tighter than they were last year. The Toro Rosso team even tighter. So they're all just trying to get more space for the air to flow around to the rear end of the car and ultimately get towards the diffuse area to make that area a bit more efficient. But you can see also the differences from Williams to other teams, McLaren, Toro Rosso, Red Bull, having way more space on the floor here. So although they've suckered it in on the top and kind of shrunk it down vertically, horizontally on the side of it, they've actually got a little bit more maybe to be desired in terms of how much they've got it tapered around on the side towards the floor area, where you can see there's way more space on the McLaren, for example, here. But we look onto this side pod, end plates of the side pods essentially, and it's a bit of an evolution for Williams because they did kind of have a winglet over the top, but it wasn't maybe as chiseled and pronounced over the top. They've now very much kind of gone for that mimic of what Red Bull, McLaren, Red Bull have been doing, and Ferrari, of course, where they have this kind of X-wing, fighter pilot wing over the top with the kind of tip edges curved upwards. They've also got another vortex generator on the actual inside face of the chassis itself, and the actual housing of the mirror obviously also becomes a vortex generator itself. So 3 vortex generator uprights on that winglet, essentially creating a tip vortices, trying to mix the air on the top and keep that energized to try and keep it as attached as possible on the engine cover as it flows down. They've also got a subtle, I didn't pick it out, but they've actually, I've only now noticed, they've got a subtle upright actually on the halo itself as well. So again, another vortex generator manipulation device on the edge of the halo, trying to keep that air a bit more structured as possible. Obviously, the halo is a massive bluff object, so that's going to make the air very, very turbulent. So the most they can do to try and chisel that air and kind of structure it towards it goes down to the rear end, the better. Essentially, the rest of the bargeboard area is very similar to what they had for last year. I can't really tell too much major differences. There might be some subtleties, but all in all, very much what they look like they ended up with Abu Dhabi. But of course, testing is to come, so they may have some different parts. And Australia as well. There's a lot of time still to the first Grand Prix, so that may change. But obviously, if they're changing major parts of the kind of top end of it and the sidepod arrangement, they might want to, first of all, assess those changes and then proceed with that. And we'll see a picture later where you can actually clearly see they're still assessing this area of the car. We move to the front of the car. They've now mimicked a lot of teams now, or well, at least 2 teams, Mercedes and Red Bull, and Alfa Romeo, actually 3 teams, with these kind of nostrils on the top, just trying to manipulate the flow as it comes off out of the S-duct. The S-duct is just very faintly there, I think, there with the lighting. Hard to tell on white, of course, but I believe they still do have an S-duct going on with the kind of inlet somewhere around here arrangement, I think, with the lighting. I'm not unable to really tell. But yeah, these nostrils trying to kind of form the air as it exits the S-duct, because some air might jut out sideways, just trying to manipulate that. And also at the same time, any free-flowing air that's coming through from the front of the car anyway is going to be affected by this. And so they're trying to channel it. So perhaps also trying to make that S-duct a bit more efficient, because if the air is being injected out the S-duct, they're trying to create that injection, that injection of air. They're trying to energize the boundary layer on the top of the chassis to try and keep it more attached on the top face. And you've got all this turbulent air, free air, which is not as structured, perhaps not being injected, obviously just coming at them from the front face. They want to try and maybe push it away to try and keep the chassis flow a bit more attached. And also at the same time, they've angled it in such a way where they're trying to maybe push it towards this entire end plate of the sidepod, because you can see that, especially on this right hand side, the way the angle is, you can see it's kind of almost deflecting towards the wing mirror and this side. So just trying to push the air where they want it to go and trying to get as much air flowing to where they need it to go, instead of just obviously just going straight on and kind of hitting the halo awkwardly on the chassis face. And then Williams have opted for a bit of a larger cape, it would seem like here, compared to last year, I believe. A bit of a bigger one than they had last year, a bit more pronounced. Very much it will almost seem like the Haas car, it would seem, and also the McLaren car. So Williams were actually one of the first few teams to actually do a sort of snowplow cape along with Williams, like 2-3 years ago when they started that trend, and they kind of cut it short a little bit for last year, so it looks like they've extended it a tad. But the rest of the car, there's not a lot striking out as massively different here in terms of what they had with last year. Of course, they've kind of pinpointed maybe the crucial areas where they were losing maybe a lot of downforce points or efficiency points in terms of the kind of sidepod arrangement area in the front kind of area, trying to move the air around. Obviously, though, testing is to come, so they may change that. At least those are the kind of the major things that I can point out looking at the kind of studio shots. And we can actually now look at some on-track shots, which obviously is better, because in real life they can't really hide much compared to the online shots in terms of kind of any Photoshop they can do. And because they were at Barcelona doing a shakedown there, so let's look at that now and kind of compare it, and you'll see the actual in real life development. So we've got a really nice shot on track here, the Williams side on, and here now you can pick out the winglet here in its actual true form, the kind of tip over here. You've got the actual upright from the wing mirror itself, and then here you've got the little ridge as well. So 3 essential vortex generators there on that top of the wing. Here is the camera. Here's a camera that was housed on this edge of the end plate sidepod, and if you look, it's directly looking at where the bargeboard areas be. So I would suggest Williams are very much assessing what this area is doing potentially, and then they're going to be developing that. So maybe week 2 they might see some upgrades on the bargeboard area. We've heard obviously teams like Ferrari are going to bring a B-spec car to second week of testing. Other teams obviously always like to try and first see what's working on the baseline and then try the kind of fancier things they're wanting to do for the Australian Grand Prix. And so very much this is a kind of a tell that they're very much still assessing that area of the car with these 2 cameras on either side. And I'm sure when testing begins, they're going to be chucking on some aero paint to actually truly see what's going to be happening there. But you can see Williams really have done a nice job of tightening up. You can see this shape of the Coke bottle really tapering in, but then like I said, on this edge where the sidepod meets the floor, that compared to other teams maybe not as developed, maybe not as suckered in as they would maybe like. But Williams have still made a step forward, I believe, in terms of trying to tighten up this entire area to help the airflow towards the rear of the car. And again, you can see from this angle the nostrils angled towards kind of sidepod inlet, actually, if you will. So maybe obviously they've kind of closed up the sidepod inlets like most teams, making them even smaller and smaller each year. And so the way the angle may be, instead of maybe actually being angled towards the end plates, it might be angled directly towards the inlet to maybe help the air get through there, just to make sure obviously there's no kind of overheating issues and they're getting enough air through the cooling. Obviously they have the inlet as well at the top, which is pretty massive for the Williams car, but at the same time the inlet here is very important, especially if they've got the radiator which is housed in the ceiling. If they've got that arrangement like Mercedes do, the air coming into that inlet is very important, and they can't obviously get that too wrong. But The rest of the car, like I mentioned, is just kind of very similar and a slight evolution. There might be some subtle differences that I'm not picking out compared to the end at Abu Dhabi in 2019. Finally, from this side-on view, again, you can see the real ridge and cutting of this side pod. Like I said, this is where I believe the radiator, they've kind of housed it the same way as Mercedes. A nice undercut, though, on the actual inlet itself. Very, very tiny. You can see literally with my mouse, that is the kind of height of the inlet. So they've really made it quite tiny along with every other team in terms of, if you compare it to Formula 1, even just like 3 years ago, where the inlet was quite massive, actually. And even the Mercedes car of last year, the inlets were quite large compared to other teams. And then, yeah, they've got a very odd side pod shape overall on the top face as well. It's very kind of straight line chiseled. That may also just be the paint lines as well, deceiving my eyes a little bit, but even from the top down view, it seems very kind of, you know, straight liney compared to some nice kind of curves. But also, if you compare it to other teams, you can also see clearly where there's maybe areas of the car where they're lacking and need to develop, you know, the floor face compared to teams like Toro Rosso, Red Bull, McLaren, where they've got way more, you know, slot gaps going on and way more kind of squirt little devices to kind of squirt the air to where they needed to the inside face or the outside face of the rear tires to try and help the airflow there, or the slot gaps trying to move the air across. And then also, like I just said, just picking out this entire area, which is an area I'm sure they're going to want to change and develop as the season goes on. But for now, it's very much kind of what they had from last season. And again, just picking out the nostrils from that side angle through. But like I said, developments, I mean, they do have actually two little ridges here trying to push the air a little bit towards upwards to try and create a bit of a net efficiency downwards. But they're lacking, you know, slot gaps here where you see other teams kind of having that kind of bleed through of air from one side to the other, kind of bleeding pressure through. So just little things like details like that where they maybe don't have it on the car yet. They might do in pre-season, or they're yet to develop things like that. But you can kind of see little kind of, you know, major parts where you can kind of tell where they maybe need to catch up in those areas. But like I said, I think they kind of thought this was the crucial area, which I kind of also agree with, the crucial area of the car, the kind of side area, and also the way the air is conditioned from the front to the back. Because obviously it doesn't matter how much you've got going on the rear, if you can't have the air conditioned the way you want it from the front, then there's no point having it, you know, all these fancy devices on the rear. So they're kind of focusing on the main areas where they feel like they were lacking. And again, you can see here, much better, this little ridge here. So just another little vortex generator on the edge of the halo, trying to condition the air as it comes off turbulent off the halo. But that is the Williams 2020 car. I do like it. I like what I'm seeing here. Is it going to be the massive leap forward that they're wanting to try and not be massively off the pace? I'm not too sure. It depends on what the kind of other teams are doing. Racing Point, obviously, we haven't seen yet. It's a nice step forward, though. You can clearly see it is a step forwards in terms of development tech-wise. And then, obviously, aesthetics-wise, like I said, I do like the look of a car. Obviously, on track, like I mentioned, the pictures maybe look a little bit less enjoyable. I think the studio shots with the lighting made it look even better with the colours popping. On track, a little bit less so, but I still think, obviously, it's a massive step forward from 2019. But do let me know what you guys think in the comments below about the aesthetics, and also, do you reckon it's going to be the step forward? Do you think Williams is going to finally be able to close that gap and maybe not be so far off the pace? Because so many times last year, we just saw them fighting each other, or just not even doing that. They were just kind of, you know, Kubica and Russell were just away from each other, just fighting their own lap times, really. So it'd be kind of cool to finally see Williams, you know, on those off races, those kind of luckier races, to maybe be right up there fighting, you know, for, you know, I say up there, fighting for P18 and 17, at least fighting on the cars. That would be at least something for them. But obviously, they're maybe hoping for even better things, so we'll see about that. But guys, if you did enjoy the video and find it informative, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, like I just mentioned. If you aren't around here to subscribe for weekly Formula 1 content, I will be hoping to get around to doing a video on the Mercedes car and the Alfa Romeo eventually, guys, and the Racing Point. Obviously, my channel got deleted on Friday, and so there was a lot of kind of fallout from that, trying to organize my video schedule, because everything pretty much changed from not having that day of videos, basically. So I'm trying to get around to the Mercedes car eventually, but I thought the Williams car would be a bit more interesting straight off the bat, because it is a much bigger change in terms of the aesthetics wise, at least. So that's why I've done the Williams car today, and the Mercedes one will hopefully be coming at least later today or tomorrow, but it'll be coming eventually. So do get subscribed for that if you aren't around here. But hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I've been aarava, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.